Again, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. U.S. President Donald Trump is 1 year in office, but in his first year in office, the U.S. leader is believed to not have made many friends in Africa. People across the continent are still furious about his alleged offensive remarks against immigrants from Haiti and African nations. African UN ambassadors and the African Union have called for a retraction and an apology from the U.S. president, but Donald Trump has denied using the derogatory phrase to criticize African immigrants coming to the U.S., which was widely quoted in the media.
Business and political leaders are meeting in Davos, Switzerland, to participate in the World Economic Forum. President Donald Trump will meet with his Rwandan counterpart, Paul Kagame, on Friday. This is the only scheduled meeting between the U.S. president and an African head of state. I'd also like to add that Bill Gates, co-founder of Microsoft and second richest person in the world, also present to Davos, said the policy of America First, led by Donald Trump, risked undermining the U.S. influence in Africa in the long run. As other countries like China continue to penetrate the African continent, the United States should not withdraw, the businessman and philanthropist continued. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has contributed approximately $12 billion to the global public health projects over the past 5 years, with particular focus on diseases such as malaria and tuberculosis.
And with us now is Calvin Dark, U.S. and International Affairs Analyst. Calvin joins us from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for joining us, Calvin. Donald Trump's coming to power surprised all those who didn't support him. And he had been wild on social media for the past 1 year and very frank with his opinions. How different is his approach compared to that of Barack Obama?
Yes. I believe the biggest difference is the motives behind what whether the former President Obama or President Trump, the motives behind what they do or didn't do or plan to do. Because first of all, when it comes to the things that President Obama did, the efforts that he made in Africa, we won't know for a few years if they've been successful. The same thing with President Trump. It's been a very different first year with President Trump than it was with President Obama. And while it's too early to really say what have been the successes with President Trump, what is clear is the perception of the motives behind what he and his administration do. For example, one of the biggest things that have happened over the last year that have affected U.S.-Africa relations are the travel ban and then the recent controversial comments that President Trump made about African countries. The reason why that's so impactful is with President Obama having been a member of the African diaspora, with our father from Africa, from the continent, the things that he did was seen differently because no one really questioned his motives or questioned why he wanted to do what he did with Africa.
You just mentioned, Calvin, you just mentioned the travel ban, and that affected hundreds of Africans working or studying in the U.S. Also, we had the decision to attack the Al-Shabaab terrorist group in Somalia. All of this, we would say, have constituted security so far as relates to Africa with the Trump administration. What would be your take on this?
First of all, I think that just in general, if I could give, from my perspective here, the best piece of advice for African countries is that the one area to pursue stronger relations with the U.S. is counterterrorism and security. Just because that's the one area in the United States where there's full support on both sides. And it's an area that Trump has made one of his biggest priorities. So while there may be a little bit unclear when it comes to other programs, a definite win for African countries would be to pursue stronger security cooperation. Now, what you were just describing, one of the, I would say, silver linings in all of those audacious comments that the president made is it actually helped some Americans understand the problem more. What I think is unfortunate and a key part of what has defined President Trump's first year with regards to Africa is Africa a lot of times is seen as a source of problems for some people in the United States.
Finally, Calvin, was Africa really on Trump's agenda?
Africa wasn't on Trump's agenda in the sense that he had a clearly defined and articulated strategy towards Africa. But as an American, I can say it's not quite clear what the Trump administration's policy and strategies are for issues here in the United States. So that remains true for a lot of things that we're dealing with. However, what is really important is that the partnerships that the United States has with Africa, be it security cooperation, but also business partnerships, humanitarian aid and assistance, those very important areas and partnerships were there before President Trump, and they'll be here after President Trump. And while these comments on social media and a lot of the controversies definitely affect the level of trust between the U.S. and our African allies, the great thing is that the relationships have been built. I think they're going to remain strong. So while...
Well, this is where we would have to leave it. Calvin Dock, thank you very much for speaking with us. U.S. and International Affairs Analyst Calvin Dock speaking to us there from Washington, D.C. Many thanks indeed.
Merci à vous, Calvin Dock.
Thank you, Calvin Dock. You're watching the Morning Call right here in Africa News. Let's take a look at some news making headlines from across Africa.